Daniel Cross stood alone on the broken rocks of a forgotten planet. The sky above was dark, filled with dust and stars. The wind blew across the surface, dry and cold. This planet had no name now. It had been lost for thousands of years. No one came here anymore. The galaxy had moved on. Daniel was not like the others. He bent down and brushed dirt off a strange metal plate. It was old, older than anything he had seen before. A strange symbol was burned into it, one he had seen only in secret books. It was the mark of the humans from the old times. The ones the galaxy now believed were myths. Daniel was not a soldier. He was a scholar, a quiet man who read too much and asked too many questions. Most people laughed at his ideas. They said humans were just stories told to scare children or make them dream. They said humans had never ruled the stars. But Daniel believed. He had always believed. And now, in this place, he had found proof. He pulled out a small scanner and connected it to the plate. A signal lit up. It was weak, old, and buried deep in the metal. He worked for hours, fingers numb, eyes wide with focus. At last, the signal opened. His screen showed one line of text. "We are not gone. We are watching." Daniel stepped back, heart beating fast. He stared at the words. They were in Old Earth English, the language he had studied in secret. It was real. The stories were true. Humans had ruled once, and they were not dead. He packed the device quickly and climbed back to his small ship. As the engine started, dust and smoke lifted into the air. He sent a message to the Galactic High Council, told them what he had found. He gave them the signal. He waited for a reply. Days passed. The council answered at last. They told him to stop wasting time. They said old signals meant nothing. They said no human ever ruled the stars. They laughed at him, again. But Daniel was not angry. He was sure now. The humans had been real. They had been powerful. Now they were waking up. He changed course. He flew far from the known space, away from the eyes of the council. He went to the dark places on the edge of the galaxy, where no one dared go. He searched old maps, followed lost paths. He found others like him, people who believed in the old tales. One of them was Elena Ward, a skilled engineer with a sharp mind and a cold voice. Another was Lucas Rain, a former captain who had once fought for the council but now trusted no one. They joined him. They wanted to know the truth too. Together they followed the signal to a place marked on no star charts. It was quiet and dead, but something waited there. A wall of broken ships floated in silence, too many to count. They were not from any known fleet. Their shapes were old, strange, beautiful, and terrifying. At the center of the ship graveyard was a massive station, shaped like a crown and dark as night. It had no lights, no movement, no sound. But as they got closer, their systems picked up a heartbeat. It's not a real one, but a power signal, slow and steady. They docked with the station. The air was cold, the halls were empty. But the walls were covered in old Earth signs and words. Elena found a control room. She worked fast. She powered it up. The lights came on. A voice filled the room. Queen Myra has returned. The fire of mankind burns again. Daniel looked at the others. No one spoke. Their faces were pale. This was no myth. This was the beginning. The voice echoed through the station. It was deep, clear, and strong. It sounded like a command, not a message. The room fell silent. Daniel stared at the glowing screen. The words repeated once more. Queen Myra has returned. The fire of mankind burns again. Lucas stepped back and raised his gun. His hands were shaking. Elena did not move. She kept her eyes on the controls. The power was now rising. Lights in the hallway flickered to life. A map of the station appeared on the screen. It showed hundreds of locked rooms and cold chambers deep below. Daniel walked forward. He touched the screen. His voice was quiet. We need to go down there. Lucas looked at him like he was mad, shook his head. We don't know what's waiting. We should leave. But Daniel did not move. He had seen enough. He knew this was the place. It was not just a station, it was a throne. It had waited for someone to wake it. He believed it had waited for her. They followed the map to a large chamber near the center of the station. The door was thick, made of dark metal. and marked with the same symbol Daniel had found on the dead planet. Alina worked on the lock. It opened with a hiss and a flash of cold air. Inside was a single pod. Stood upright, tall and quiet. Ice covered the glass. A woman was inside. She wore silver armor, smooth and sharp. Her eyes were closed.
Oh.
Her black hair floated around her face. She looked like a statue from a lost age. Daniel stepped closer. He read the words on the glass. Queen Mira, last of the human dominion. The lights around the pod turned green. A low hum filled the room. Steam rose as the pod opened. The woman's eyes opened. They were bright and cold, like steel. She stepped out without fear. She looked at them one by one. Her voice was calm. "Who wakes me?" Daniel answered with a dry throat. "My name is Daniel Cross. I found your signal." She stared at him for a moment. Then she walked past him and touched the wall. The station reacted to her touch. Systems came alive. Engines hummed. Lights glowed red. She turned back to them. "The galaxy forgot us, but we will make them remember." Queen Mira stood tall in the center of the chamber. Her armor gave off a low glow. She looked strong, quiet, and dangerous. The air around her felt heavier now. Daniel, Alina, and Lucas watched her closely. No one spoke. She looked at the three of them with sharp eyes. Then she walked to the control panel and placed her hand on it. The screen changed. It showed hundreds of ships outside the station. They were dark and silent, but their shapes were perfect. Some looked like daggers, some like flying cities. All of them were human. "These ships are mine," Mira said. "They have slept as I have, but now they wake." Alina stepped forward. "You were in that pod for a long time. What happened? Why did you sleep?" Mira turned slowly. "The war ended. We won every battle, but lost the peace. The galaxy feared us. They united against us. So I made a choice. I put my fleet to sleep. I waited. I knew one day the stars would grow soft again." Lucas shook his head. "You plan to start a war?" Mira looked at him with no fear. "Not a war. A return. The others have forgotten who ruled these stars. They speak of peace, but they have grown weak. They must remember what it means to kneel." Daniel looked down. His mind was spinning. This was more than he had expected. He had searched for history, for truth. But now that truth stood in front of him, alive and ready to bring fire back to the stars. He looked at Mira. "We don't know what the galaxy is like now. Things may have changed. There are people out there who don't even know humans were real. Then they will learn," Mira said. "They will see our ships, our strength, our will, and they will remember." Lena crossed her arms. "How can we trust you?" Mira smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You can't. Trust is not needed. You came here for answers. I gave them now. You must decide. Will you stay, or will you run?" Lucas looked at Daniel. "I say we leave. This is too big. This is something old and deadly." Daniel did not answer right away. He watched the screens as ship systems came online one by one. The fleet was waking. The old power was rising. "I didn't come all this way to run," he said at last. "Want to see what comes next?" Mira nodded. "Good. You will witness the return of the true rulers of the stars." She walked toward the command seat and sat down. As she did, the station shook slightly. Engines deep below began to fire. The station was moving. Outside, the ships were starting to light up. The stars around them now looked smaller, colder. Mira gave the order. "Begin the call. Wake the others." Signals burst from the station, flying through space in every direction. They carried the old codes, the voice of the Queen, the fire of mankind. Across forgotten worlds, across dark corners of space, old systems began to blink. Hidden bunkers opened. Cold chambers hissed. Old soldiers, long asleep, opened their eyes. The past was no longer gone. It was rising again. And the galaxy would never be the same. The ships moved like shadows across the stars. They were silent, fast, and deadly. No warnings were given. No signals were sent. The first target was a peaceful trade planet named Iridon. It was a center of business and travel. Thousands lived there. They believed they were safe. At sunrise, the sky turned black. The fleet of Queen Myra arrived without a sound. The ships circled the planet like birds of prey. Then, without a single word, the attack began. Lasers cut through the defense grid in seconds. The ground shook as energy blasts hit key points on the surface. Spaceports, power stations, and military outposts were destroyed in minutes. By the end of the first hour, Iridan was silent. There were no messages sent to the galaxy, no claims made, only destruction. And across space, the signal of the Queen's voice whispered through the void. Let the stars remember who we are. In the control room of the throne station, Mira stood over the battle map. Daniel watched the red lights fade as Iridan went dark. He felt a cold wave inside him. It had started. There was no turning back now. Alina entered the room with a datapad. Her face was pale. 6 planets have sent out calls for help, she said. The council is in chaos. They don't know who is attacking. Lucas walked in behind her. He looked angry. They will know soon, and they will fight back. Mira turned toward him. Let them. Their weapons are weak. Their minds are soft. They speak of peace, but they hide behind walls in fear. They forgot what war means. I will remind them. Daniel stepped forward. Iridan had no army. It was not a threat. Why attack it first? Myra looked at him with sharp eyes. Because it was loud. Because it believed it was untouchable. Fear spreads faster than fire. That is what I need. Daniel wanted to argue, but he said nothing. Deep inside, he knew she was right. The galaxy had become soft. It had grown fat and blind in its peace. But still, he felt something was wrong. On a far planet, inside the main council chamber, leaders from across the stars sat in fear. Reports filled their screens. Ships gone, colonies silent. Panic spread like a wave. They had no answers. Only old stories came to mind. Stories about humans, monsters and flesh. Legends of destruction. One of the older council members stood and spoke. This is not a new enemy. This is a return. The humans have come back. Back on the throne station, Mira gave her next order. Send the fleet to the core worlds. Take their strongholds. Crush their pride. Her commanders followed without question. Old warlords, human-born and bred, had begun to rise from hidden chambers. They remembered the old ways. They remembered her voice. And they were ready to serve again. Alina sat in silence. Lucas sharpened his blade. Daniel stared at the stars. The galaxy was awake now, but it was too late. The fire of mankind had returned. The council world of Myria stood proud at the heart of the galaxy. Tall towers reached into the sky, glowing with power. Ships moved in perfect order. It was the center of law, trade, and peace. The leaders believed their walls would hold. They believed no enemy could reach them. They were wrong. Myra's fleet came fast and hard. The sky above Myria turned red as fire rained down. Defense ships tried to stop the attack, but they were old and slow. One by one they fell. Fleet moved like a blade through soft cloth. Within minutes, the first layer of defense was broken. On the surface, alarms screamed. People ran through the streets. Soldiers rushed to their posts, but nothing could stop what was coming. From the sky fell black pods filled with human soldiers. They landed across the city, breaking through steel and stone. When the pods opened, the old warriors stepped out in silence and began the assault. Daniel watched the battle from the command deck. He saw the smoke rising, the lights breaking. He felt no joy. He had found the truth he wanted, but the truth was not beautiful. It was full of fire and pain. Lucas stood beside him. He held a rifle in one hand and a blade in the other. They still don't understand, Lucas said. They thought stories were just stories. Now they faced the truth. Alina entered the room. Her face was tired. The council is falling. Half of their fleet is gone. The rest are retreating. Mira stepped forward and looked at the burning planet below. Her voice was calm. This is only the beginning. Daniel turned to her. How far will you go? She looked at him. Till the galaxy bows. Until no one forgets who we are. In the ruins of Myria, the council leaders were captured. They were brought to their knees before Mira. She did not speak to them. She only watched. Then she gave the order. Across the stars, messages were sent. They showed the fall of Myria. They showed the power of the human fleet. Every planet saw it. Every world heard the message. The humans had returned. Not as myths, not as ghosts, but as rulers. Mira stood at the center of her war room. Round her, large screens showed the state of the galaxy. Red marks covered many worlds. Her fleet was growing stronger with every battle. More old ships were waking. More soldiers were joining her cause. Lena watched the maps without speaking. She felt the weight of every city that burned. She had followed Mira to learn the truth, but the truth had become something else. It had become a storm. Lucas stood ready for the next mission. He had fought in wars before, but nothing like this. He had never seen fear spread so fast. Whole fleets were giving up without a fight. Soldiers were throwing down their weapons at the first sight of a human ship. Daniel sat at a quiet corner of the room. He read reports and watched the faces of people across the galaxy. Some were angry, some were scared, but some cheered. On many forgotten planets, the return of the humans had brought hope. These people had once lived under human rule. Now they welcomed the return of the Queen. A warning light flashed. A new signal came in. It was from a hidden base deep in the star belt. The enemy had fired a weapon known as the Sunpires. It was strong enough to destroy a whole planet. Its target was Mira's command station. Elena moved fast. It's real. It's charging. We must act now. Mira did not panic. She gave orders with a clear voice. Split the station. Move the cores. Let them fire. Let them see what it gains them. In minutes, the giant station broke into 5 smaller parts. Each part turned and vanished into different parts of space. The enemy fired the Sunpires. It hit nothing but cold air and shadows. Daniel stared at the screen. You knew they would try this, Mira answered. They are weak, but they are not fools. Fear makes them dangerous. Lucas gave a cold smile. Now they have nothing left. Mira looked out into space. Now we ended. She gave the command. The fleet turned toward the last free worlds. The final stage had begun. There would be no more warnings. The fire would burn until the stars remembered their true rulers. The sky above the last free world turned red. Mira's fleet moved in perfect order. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, and strike ships flew like blades through the stars. The final battle had come. On the surface, defenders stood ready. They knew they could not win, but they chose to fight. Their weapons fired into the sky as Mira's ships broke through the clouds. The ground shook, buildings fell, the air burned. Mira stood in her command room, silent. Her face showed no fear, no joy. She watched as her ships took the skies, as her soldiers dropped into the cities. Her voice rang out across the fleet. Take the capital, end the war. Daniel watched from behind her. His heart was heavy. He had found the truth he searched for. But now that truth was covered in blood. He stepped forward. Mira, it's over. They are broken. We have one. What more do you want? She turned to him. Her eyes were cold. I want the galaxy to never forget. Elena entered with a report. Their leaders are trying to escape. One of our teams is closing in. Mira gave no answer. She walked to the main screen and watched as her soldiers reached the heart of the enemy city. Explosions lit the sky. Fighters flew low, clearing the path for the ground forces. Lucas stood near the landing deck, ready to join the strike. His armor was scratched, his hands were steady. I will bring you the flag of their last city, he said. Mira nodded once. Lucas stepped into his dropship, ready to finish the job. Hours later, silence fell. The city had fallen. The enemy leaders were captured. Their flag was torn down. The last voice of resistance was gone. Mira stepped onto the broken steps of the fallen city. People knelt around her. Soldiers raised her banner. Her voice rose above the ruins. Let all who live remember this day. The age of man has returned. Daniel looked at the scene. He turned and walked away. He had seen enough. Far from the war, he started sending messages. Quiet messages. Not of hate, but of warning. He believed power must be balanced, even human power. Mira ruled the stars, but Daniel knew one truth. The fire that burns the brightest must also be watched the closest.